And at 5 o'clock, there was $100,000 in our account.
We got some guests.
So we have Bruce Carlisle
You look like Bryan Cranston.
and his daughter, Marina Mirolli.
I hope that's good.
He is a land broker.
He left $9 million on the table because
We get to learn about land today.
It can be worth $5,000 an acre. It can be worth $500,000 an acre. All hinging upon.
Well, we're also going to talk the father-daughter dynamic.
Marina said not to share this one, but I'm going to violate her idea.
And I do almost no land and know almost nothing.
Landowners may not realize the leverage they have.
So basically, you don't have to just bend over and get spanked. You can negotiate how many pairs of underwear you can put on before the spanking. Oh my goodness.
How did you get diagnosed?
It was Brad Leaf.
This was my brother-in-law that I was telling you about.
Yeah, this is our brother-in-law. He talked to mom and dad and was like, this is around the time I was in Memphis and stuff, and a bit of a troublemaker, as it were, and yeah, he talked to them. It was like, Timmy might have ADHD. This has really helped me, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up going to see somebody and was diagnosed at the age of 19. And then I got straight A's that next semester, and then lost my scholarship right after that. So yeah, it was then.
There's a really obvious follow-up question to what you just said.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm not going to ask it.
You can.
Well, if you got straight A's,
Yeah.
how'd you lose your scholarship? It must have been something other than academic.
It was the next semester. I didn't get all A's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that year, I was trying to gain my residency to be able to pay in-state tuition. So I was taking only half classes, like a part-time student. So the next year, I got a scholarship. And at that time, I wasn't on any of the medication. I was actually studying theater, but we had a few of those gen ed classes I didn't care about. And a C in one of those classes, I lost my scholarship. And then my advisor said, hey, you don't need this. You don't need this. You're going to be an actor.
You are my example of the truth that not everybody needs to go to college.
Oh, yeah.
Like it doesn't. And even when it comes to my kids, like if any of my kids said, hey, I'd rather just start working with you right off the bat.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be all for that.
Yeah.
I'll teach you everything you need to know.
Right.
And other than I think there's a lot of growth that happens in college, but
Right.
Right. There's value there, but
there is. It doesn't have to put you in so much student debt. That's what I think.
Right.
This is a different conversation.
Yeah,
I got some thoughts, but we'll leave that to another time. The guests are just waiting on us here, or waiting on me. We got some guests, right?
We do. We have guests.
Yes. Okay. Introduce me.
So we have Bruce Carlisle and his daughter, Marina Mirolli. And Marina was my student last year in Atlanta for 102, which is how we met. And then Bruce was with SVN way back in the day. Are you still with SVN?
No, I have my own firm and just been rocking and rolling since about 94.
Rocking and rolling since 94. That sounds like a hit song, pop song. Rocking and rolling since 1994. Anyway.
And Bruce, and this is why we've got them on, well, a number of reasons why we have them on, but he is a land broker. So he specializes in selling land.
Yeah.
And they're in the Atlanta area, and I do almost no land and know almost nothing about being a land broker. And so
Great.
we get to learn about land today.
Great. And did you tell me they have a book all about land?
Oh, yeah. He wrote a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we have them come in, jump in? Can you all tell us a little about yourselves?
Happy to. So I'll jump in first. Native Atlantan. I actually will be celebrating my 40th year in commercial brokerage. So very excited. I have only had one career since I got out of college, and it's been just such a fun ride other than 08, 9, and 10. But other than that, it has provided a wonderful opportunity for flexibility and income, and then ultimately bringing Marina on board about 3 years ago has been just an answer to so many great things that we're doing together and enjoying one another. And she's a much quicker study than I was. So she's adding all kinds of new, from marketing and technology to just her energy level is much different from a 62-year-old to a 30-year-old. So
I'm Marina. I'm Bruce's daughter, one time. And I also grew up here in Atlanta and went to the University of Georgia, go Dogs, studied journalism and public relations in school. So the first 5 years of my career, I was working for a PR firm, moved out to Southern California, was running marketing efforts for a handful of national brands, think Airstream travel trailers and Columbia Sportswear. And then 2020 happened and everything was shaken up, including my personal life. And I decided to get married, move back to Atlanta, and make a huge career change. I was looking for something that was sustainable, something that I could do for a long time, and commercial real estate felt like quite the fit. So I got in the business with my dad 3 years ago. Like Bo mentioned, I did all 4 of the CCIM classes last year, and Bo was my teacher for 102. He's a good teacher.
How'd you do with the absorption questions real quick? Do you remember?
Vaguely. But I'm going to sit for the pin in April in Nashville. So
Congrats. Nice.
Well, good. I will see you there.
I do got to say, Bruce, I don't know whether, look on my screen right now, you two are sideways. I don't know whether it's just because y'all are sideways, but you look like Bryan Cranston, Walter White.
Oh,
do you see it?
I can see that.
Yeah. Anyway, handsome, very handsome, good actor.
I hope that's good.
Breaking Bad, if you're familiar. Maybe you're not, but yeah. Bryan Cranston. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
So I do want to know, because Marina just kind of shared with us how she got into the business, and obviously she had the runway that you paved for her, Bruce. How did you get in the business?
So that's a fun story. So I grew up playing competitive tennis, and when I was at one of the clubs, I was hanging out with these guys. They always wanted to play with the juniors. So I'm like 15, 16, and I'm playing with these guys who are, 35, 40 years old. And I'm noticing that they're driving these really nice cars and they're playing tennis at 3:00 in the afternoon in the middle of the week. And as I got to know these guys, several of them were in commercial real estate. And one of them in particular said, we need to get you into his company. And he was running the premier land company in Atlanta back in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
And so once I graduated, it was a natural fit. I think back, it was 1984. I was getting married that same year. I was 23. I was being paid a whopping $1,000 a month.
Wow.
And then a percentage of any deal that happened in my geography. But the cool thing that I think is so important is the training that he gave me. He helped me understand the things that impact land's value. Everything from sewer to zoning to road improvements to major employers to great schools, and the things that take away from land like rock and floodplain and streams and wetlands. And so as you began to really know the levers that push the value, it really enabled me and our company, and now Marina, to be able to go in and know exactly how to analyze a piece of property and help owners understand its potential. Learning from somebody who's really good at what they do is important. In a smaller market, as you said earlier, land doesn't trade quite as quickly where you are. But for those listeners who are in more dynamic areas, you follow the growth of the interstates and great schools and executive housing, and land's a fun place to play.
Well, you just answered my next question, which was why land? And it seemed like your mentor was a land guy, and so that's what you did.
Yeah, we're going to talk land, I assume, right?
Yeah.
But we're also going to talk the father-daughter dynamic as well. Is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if we said that yet, but
Yeah. You care where we start?
no, not at all. Not at all. I just want to let our listeners know what they're in for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's all.
In your explanation just there, as you were communicating, like what levers affect the value of land and the demand for it, and all these 102's concepts started popping off. Like we should do an episode on growth theories.
Okay.
Because you just mentioned essentially the axial growth theory that says, along the interstates, along the roadways is a huge clue on the path of growth. If you own a big chunk of land in the path of growth, then you've got some opportunity for some real value there. If you're on the other side, you might have a big chunk of dirt that just has very little value and there's not much demand for it.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that'd be interesting. But talk about some of the levers that you mentioned. Like, what are some things that really impact? Like, what can our listeners learn about the value of land, things they can do, smart moves they can make, or problems they could avoid?
So I think what we've noticed, it's fun to look back over 40 years of the way growth has happened in Atlanta. And in North Atlanta, you have 3 major interstates leaving the city. You have I-85 going northeast and Georgia 400, which really is an interstate going to nowhere. It goes up to the mountains, but it's executive housing. It's where all the corporate headquarter, high-end people want to live. And then I-75, which is another distribution corridor. So as you look at the growth along these corridors, you see exactly where are these major employers landing, and then where within those submarkets, you start looking at schools, you start looking at the municipalities and the friendliness or lack of friendliness of the local government. And we have some stories we can touch on whenever it's appropriate about the importance of understanding, if you're a landowner, understanding local politics, because the ebbs and flows of municipalities really control a lot of your potential value as a landowner. And if you play that well, you can really do well. And if you don't, you can leave lots of money on the table.
Well, let me ask Timmy a couple questions, if you don't mind, and we'll see how he does on like a pre-quiz here.
Yeah, sure.
So Bruce was just talking about how employers showing up can greatly impact the value of land.
Yes.
Like, why would you say that is?
Well, because you do an economic-based analysis, you'll see the growth and all the jobs coming to town, and
Because people create what?
the demand for space.
Yes. And every space that's ever been built has been built on what?
The need, demand.
Say land.
Land. It's on dirt.
It's on the dirt.
It's on dirt. It's on land. That's right.
So if you have jobs showing up, then you have people showing up. There's going to be demand for space. And so the people that are going to create that space need Bruce to go find them the land to do it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
So everything we were talking about in the last episode with absorption and how it can help developers predict what's going on. If you're a land guy, you're selling these people the land for them to develop, right? That seems pretty obvious. So when you're talking about like understanding the local politics and things, I think it is a good time for a story.
Yeah, because if you go back and think about the strategic analysis model,
Yes.
like what's one of those 4 feasibility tests?
Location and site.
Location and site, and then, but there's also the
Financial
whole,
feasibility, competitive and market analysis, and will they let me do it?
yeah, political and legal.
Political
will
and
they
legal.
let me? And that's kind of going. So yeah, give us a will they let me story from one of these municipalities.
So there's a family who owned a large tract here in North Atlanta, and they had a national home builder who contracted for it, subject to zoning it for 500 residential units.
Okay.
And those units were valued. Each unit is a lot, whether it's a townhome lot or a detached lot, at roughly $30,000 per lot. So we're looking at a $15 million deal.
Whoa.
The Board of Commissioners came back and said, we will give you 200 units. And so if you look at the 300 units that the landowner lost at $30,000 a unit, he left $9 million on the table because he didn't zone his property back when there was a friendly Board of Commissioners that would have supported that use. The no-growthers came in and they decided to sell when there wasn't a chance, and it was a $9 million hit. I've seen that repeat itself across Metro Atlanta in different counties and cities based upon the ebbs and flows of the politics and the, constituency raising Cain about no more growth, no more growth. So they vote out the mayor, they vote out the commissioners, bring in a no growth, and then, nothing happens for a while, and then they get voted out. And I mean, that's the pendulum. I share a story that to most landowners, if you understand how messed up our national politics are, it's the same way on a local level. It's an absolute cluster, and you really have to know how to try to maneuver it from a timing standpoint. Do you want to?
Yeah, there's a few other things that people can do that we cover in the book that are just kind of like tips, things that people think through or don't think through. And one of them is, how does a landowner leverage infrastructure and improvements happening around their property? So 2 stories for you. One story of a landowner who did it well. One story of a landowner who kind of missed the boat here. So the landowner who did it well, their property was fronting a state route, and the DOT comes in and they're going to widen the road. Part of the story is the DOT is putting in a median along the whole middle of the road. He got a median cut right in front of his property, which means you can take a left out. So when you think about access to a property and how the values can go up or down, it makes a huge difference if you can take a left into the property and a left out of the property.
Right.
And so this guy, before he even was thinking about selling the land, he saw what was coming, and he said, I want a median cut right in front of my property, and I want you all to install curb cuts. So there's like a perfect little driveway into the front of his property, and then just 50 acres of trees. And he's thinking, down the road, this will come in handy.
Wow.
And so now fast forward.
Well, before you leave that one, because I think landowners may not realize the leverage they have. I mean, the DOT, they can take your property, but you can also fight them over the value and over other things that they could provide for you, like a median cut, and like curb cuts. And so this landowner got good counsel. And
So basically, you don't have to just bend over and get spanked. You can negotiate
Yeah.
how many pairs of underwear you can put on before the spanking.
Property rights. So the flip side, the story of the landowner who kind of didn't take advantage of the situation, they owned a big piece of property, and the property next door to them was being developed for a neighborhood, and they were bringing sewer lines through this neighborhood. And what this landowner should have done is gotten a sewer easement so that down the road, they are able to tap into the nearest manhole. At the time, they didn't do that. The neighborhood next door gets fully built out. It's doing great. And now this landowner is thinking, I want to sell my land, but I have no way of accessing the sewer. So they're in a pickle if sewer drives value, and they're trying to figure out, who can we sell this land to? Yeah. We end up coming in to work with them and bring in a super creative developer
prior to bringing in this developer, we had worked with two others who could not overcome zoning and they could not figure out the sewer. And they had some of the best engineers try to figure out a workaround.
Yeah.
So this third guy, super creative developer, actually gets 2 sewer easements from just like neighborhood homeowners. And he bores under along their property line, hits the nearest manhole in the subdivision next door. So he figured out a workaround, but it was a headache and a cluster that could have been prevented if, when you're looking at neighboring developments happening around you, you got to be thinking, do I need an easement? How can I make sure this works out for me? Even if I don't sell my land for 10, 20, 30 years, you can do things now that really help the value.
That's great.
It really is incumbent upon the municipalities to be making sure that as growth is occurring, they're taking care of downstream owners and they're trying to provide easements and access to utilities that get installed by the county. And the county basically dropped the ball and the landowner dropped the ball and they ended up, it cost everybody.
Can I add one more?
Sure. Please, Maria, please.
So super practical, basic thing when we're talking about rezoning property. And you think of how much is land worth? People always ask, how much, per acre, ballpark, where, what's a piece of land worth? And the truth is, it can be worth $5,000 an acre. It can be worth $500,000 an acre. And it's all hinging upon what can be built on the land. So like a really basic example is, say you have, a piece of property that can be zoned for one house to the acre. And if each lot is $30,000 an acre, or $30,000 for one lot, you got $30,000 an acre. If suddenly that property is rezoned and you can put 3 houses on an acre, each of the lots still being $30,000, now you're at $90,000 an acre. So it's like that can swing in huge ways depending on the zoning.
And last point on that is, I'm sorry.
No, please.
Don't be sorry.
Please, it's great.
The trend that used to be, and this has changed over the last 10 years, is larger lots meant higher prices. And what has happened is the trend is actually reversed in that people don't want to take care of a big yard. They would rather have open space and be able to have walking trails that someone else is maintaining. And so the whole idea that larger lots are better is really not true. And the market's proving that out, at least in Atlanta.
You made a comment. And look, our dad was and our granddad, they were home builders. Like that was kind of the genesis of our company way back in the 50s. My grandfather started building homes. But you made a comment, sewers drive value. Explain to Timmy why that's a true statement.
When you think, Timmy, of building an apartment complex, and maybe this apartment complex is 20 units an acre, you can't do that on a septic tank. On septic tanks, you really are limited as to exactly what you can build. There is some technology that's changing where you can begin to do private sewer plants and things like that. But without sewer, you really are limited. And so one of the things I've stressed to Marina is if a landowner calls us and says, we have this big piece of property, but it's in the middle of nowhere and I have no idea who would buy it, we don't want to really go down that path. When we work on property, we know who the buyers and what the use would be, or we don't take the listing. So the idea of really, is access to sewer drives everything relative to density, and density equals price.
Yeah.
One thing I'll add about sewer that's interesting, that is a cool story, was there's capacity in the sewer lines, and then there's a capacity in the sewer treatment plant. So we were working on a piece of property that the sewer lines were at capacity, but the plant had capacity.
Timmy, what that means is, you can't put any more sewage in the pipes that get to the plant. So you're done.
Right.
No chance. So the creative solution was, we're going to put holding tanks on this piece of property. We're going to put all the sewage during the day into the holding tank. And in the middle of the night, when the lines are pretty empty, we're going to pump the sewage to the plant. And it was a super clever, creative solution that originally you're like, we have no chance here. And then you just think of ways around it.
Now, I'm looking at you right now,
Yeah.
and you haven't made one sewer joke.
I know, I'm waiting for the poop.
And like, we've been talking about poop for like 3 or 4 minutes now, and you've said nothing. And
I'm deciding which one.
I'm wondering what's wrong with you.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to hear it out and all that, but this conversation, like on a serious note, it makes me think of a book. Everyone Poops. You know that book for kids? Yeah. Great book. I'll link it in the comments. Link it in the show notes. But yeah, it seems like you all would be very valuable to the Ninja Turtles as well with your information. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. You know, there's a community north of Lexington, Kentucky, which has put a moratorium on apartment development because they're at sewer capacity.
Uh-huh.
Like this small town can't handle
The poop.
They can't handle it.
You can't handle the poop.
There it is. There it is. I knew something was coming.
You gotta have a Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
I think I'm entitled. Okay. Oh boy. All right. Another word you use that I want to make sure that Timmy understands, and frankly,
You too?
no, like,
Oh.
explain to him what an easement is.
I think I know.
Yeah?
Is it like the actual tubing?
No.
Yes. Explain to me what an easement is.
So an easement is basically a form of ownership where you have the right to go on someone's property and install a power line, a sewer line, access, but you don't own the land. You just get an easement from them and are allowed to cross their property. It's interesting because when you're doing a sewer easement, you typically will have a 20-foot permanent easement in Atlanta. And so that's where the permanent easement would go so they could access the sewer if there was a problem. Mm-hmm. But when you're installing it, you typically will need probably a 60 or 80 foot with the rest of that outside the 20 being temporary construction easements. And so people get real nervous. I'm not giving you 80 feet. And no, it's just temporary until we get it installed. So it's basically the right to use property to install something, but you don't own it. Yeah. The owner still pays taxes on it.
And that could be for a road, like an access easement or a power line.
And if I'm the landowner and easements are on my property, that encumbers my property and it limits what I could do there in certain circumstances. Like it encumbers my land.
Yeah.
And limits what I can actually do with it.
Sure.
Like we just bought 15 acres, you know, because I'm going the opposite way. You know, I'm not going small lot. My wife wanted some space. And so we just bought 15 acres out in the county. And one of the things we looked at is, are there easements on the property that would limit what my intended use of that acreage was?
Gotcha.
Yep.
There's some perceived things that go along with easements as well. And some of that perception, at least in Atlanta, we have some of those really giant power line easements that may be, 200 feet wide that are giant, utility lines crossing, the state. And you can hear them crackle, and a lot of people are like, I'm not sure I want to be too close to this. Yeah. And I'm sure the power companies are all saying, oh, they're very safe. I'm not convinced. And so the perceived negative impact of being too close to, say, a large power situation.
That made me think of buying a piece of property. And this is a super basic thing that you'd be surprised how many landowners don't do this, but is walking the land. We tell landowners, walk your land at least twice a year, go to the edges, go to the corners, look for encroachments, look for outcroppings of rock. We worked with a landowner who the property next door to him was being developed, and he hadn't walked the land in a while. And they were actually dumping water onto the back of his property.
Oh,
And when he decided he wanted to sell, there was like 20% of his land that was no longer buildable, that was officially classified as a creek. And prior to the neighboring development happening, all his land was buildable. And it's like, that's the kind of thing where if you're not on top of it, things around you can happen that affect your property negatively. So that's like a little tip for landowners.
yeah. Oh, no, don't stand. Go walk the land.
Is that Johnny Cash?
Yeah. Well, sort of. This is a Johnny Cash / Weird Al. Yeah, it's Johnny Cash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was pretty good. That story was in your book, right? Like I remember reading about that in the book. And tell me the name of the book, just so we can make sure we link to it.
Yeah, Top Dollar Dirt.
Top Dollar Dirt.
Great name.
Yeah.
I love that.
I wanted to go back a little bit. You were talking about the no-growthers, and so my broker brain started churning when you were talking about the no-growthers. It would seem, and I bet this is kind of a staple.
Is that another name for liberals? Generally speaking, no growthers.
Not necessarily.
I mean, in your all's experience, when the politics lean left, is the no growthing happening? I'm just curious.
Not necessarily.
Yeah. What would you all say? No.
No, I think it's what's really funny is once people move in and buy, then they don't want anyone else to be able to move in and buy.
Oh, gotcha.
They got theirs, and so let's stop everything else.
Yeah, this would be more, I would say, like in the realm of selfishness and greed
Yeah. Okay.
than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
Not wanting things to change around you,
Oh, being conservative.
which describes our town. Like we live in this little town where most people have never lived anywhere else. They complain about 15 minutes of traffic. Like they've never tried to drive through Atlanta. And they don't want things to change. And so we had a outer loop proposed here in town. That, if you just think about the axial growth, you add roadways to the outskirts of town, it opens up a lot of land for development that just don't have good roadway access. They certainly don't have sewers and all these other things. And like the community banded, I mean, there were yard signs everywhere say no to the outer loop. Like our town wants things to remain as it is.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing wrong with that unless you're a developer. It's not the most friendly place to do business. But my thought was when you guys were talking about the no-growthers was, man, if I could identify where there is pro-growth in Atlanta, then those are the landowners that I'm going to be prospecting and educating and guiding to, hey, look, maybe you don't want to sell, all right? But let me share with you some things you could do now that you might not be able to do later that would potentially maximize your growth or maximize the value of your property for the next generation or the generation after that that's going to end up owning this property. You can do some things now, which, Bruce, you might make some great friends doing that Marina ends up doing deals with 20 years from now.
One of the things along those lines is, it's very common. We're never selling. And that could be true for Mrs. Jones. But when Mrs. Jones' kids get the property, we saw one property had been in their family for 130 years.
Yeah.
I mean, every piece will sell at some point in history. It could be 3, 4, 5 generations. But to your point, Bo, if you can do things to protect the long-term viability and value, that's what we try to encourage. And we've done exactly what you've said. We try to go to the little cities around Atlanta that want growth and see one of the things that we do is say, okay, here's the city boundaries. What's touching the city that we could annex in? And so that whole idea of trying to utilize, do we stay in the county or do we go into the city? And it gives you some leverage.
You know, we've had some guests in the past. We did some in 2023 where we had them on and all we did was tell crazy real estate stories. And I'm sure you've got some, but like, what are some unique or just interesting or crazy, land stories on deals you've worked on in the past?
Well,
There's a lot.
Marina said not to share this one, but I'm going to violate her idea.
Here we go, people.
This is going to be great.
Timmy just got really excited.
Yeah.
Anytime I ever say like, we're not going to talk about that, he's like, no, we are.
That's exactly what that's going to be the first clip of the podcast.
So there was a landowner who had an amazing tract of land, but had a notorious reputation of being difficult to deal with. Part of what is fun about working together is we take everything as a challenge. Great. They don't want anybody. We're going to be the first ones. We're going to get this listing. This is going to be great. So the husband, we could never win over, but we ended up walking the property with the wife. She, I think, really liked Marina. And so we ended up getting a 60-day listing because we knew who the buyers would be. We presented it to all our top buyers. We had 2 buyers who made offers.
We had 4 full offers, but 2 that were over asking.
Over asking price. Big numbers. And
big numbers.
And so the owners just said, we don't want to go through the entitlement process. We don't want to do, we don't want to wait. And this all was like, okay, this smells a little funny.
They were kind of like, we decided we don't want to sell. And we're like, huh?
Yeah. And so then about day 80, 90, I check back with them and they're under contract. And they're under contract with somebody who's going to buy it as is. And we're like, there's only one person who would be doing that.
And we presented it to these people.
And we know who that is. And
you know where they live.
well, I mean, we talked to a couple different attorneys. We really tried to, think through this. And are we going to hire an attorney? This was about an hour and a half away from where we live. And it was like the whole energy of lawsuits and brain damage and emotional energy that lawsuits take. We just decided we're going to step back. Everybody gets their due.
Yep.
Right.
So it was December of 22, and I get a phone call. I've never met the guy. He goes, "Merry Christmas. I understand that you were involved in this property that our clients purchased, and we just want to pay you $5,000 to sign this lien waiver so we can have clear title." And I'm like, oh, wow, that's really nice. And I'm thinking, this smells so funny. So we hang up. I think we verbally told him 25 grand or something. And we waited. Marina starts digging. She starts going through the state LLCs, figuring out who these people are.
Let's go, Marina. Come on now.
I'm like, you're not getting away with this. Not if I have something to do with it.
About 8 layers down
Of LLCs, companies who owned a company, who owned a company. I'm like, who's the bottom of this?
was the owner next door who we had presented it to. And so it was a Friday afternoon. We are livid. We tried to call one of our coaches to say, like, what do we do? And we kind of had this idea that we only want to work on something where we can at least get a fee that's a 6-figure fee, because their deals take forever. They're really hard. And so Marina's like, well, put 100 on that. Strike through the lien waiver thing from 5,000, write 100. And I'm like,
Send it back.
And I'm nervous. I'm like, we're going to blow this thing. They're not going to do this. And she's going, Dad, that's what we said. That's our thing, right? So I strike through it, initial it. This is a 1-page lien waiver, and write this email to this attorney who it came from and said, wire the money to this account by the end of the day. And at 5 o'clock, there was $100,000 in our account. And you know, as only a commercial broker thinks, we should have asked for more.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's good.
And
That's
so-
opening up the podcast right there. That line you just said.
We
Yeah,
should
go
have
ahead.
asked for more. Yep, absolutely true.
You always rethink. I mean, as brokers, we always think, you know, and at the end of the day, we were so happy to not deal with that family, to not deal with a lawsuit, to not, you know, I don't think anyone really wins in the lawsuit. Get legal with people. And 4 years, I've never been in a lawsuit, thanks be to God. And I just think life is too short and it's not worth dealing with those people. So the moral of that story too is, if someone has a reputation, the likelihood that they're going to change colors and all of a sudden become a good person, probably not so good.
My dad has always said, no one will fight for you like you. And we tell that to landowners too. Like, you need to be your own advocate. You need to make sure you know what's happening around your property. And that was a moment on a Friday afternoon where the two of us were like, no one's going to fight for us like us. So here we go. Me and you, man.
Yeah. And now I can clearly see Marina's value in this company. Like, I can clearly see it. That's incredible. That's inspiring
Well,
and badass.
yeah. All those things, but like the team that you guys make
Yeah.
is really interesting to me. And, you know, we talked about this and before we hit record, but you don't see a lot of father-daughter teams. And like, I'm in the business because of our dad.
Right.
And he's in the business because of his dad. And so that's kind of normal. But share with us a little bit about what it's like because look, I've got a 14-year-old daughter and I've got two sons that are older than her. And I would love to have any of them come back and work in the company. Like, that would be just, you know, like the dream of a dad to get to work with your kids. And if it is like my 21-year-old son interned with me for a summer when he was 19. He was in a 102 course that I taught. He didn't fall asleep. He passed. Matter of fact, he had a higher grade than I did when I took 102.
Yeah.
But so I've gotten a little bit of experience of working with my oldest son. But just talk a little bit about what it's like, because it's different, it's unique, it's cool. I love it. I hope I get to have that experience in the future with my kids. But tell
Mine
us
too.
a little bit about what that's like.
All right, who wants to go?
Yeah, who starts first?
I mean, I'll start, but I mean, I'll tear up. I'm going to let her go. I mean, because there's nothing more important than, you know, the friendship, the father-daughter piece. So we have to keep that. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I get it.
Honestly, didn't expect that to happen, but
Let it go. Let it go.
yeah, it's a real gift. It really is. It's funny. I make an annual goals sheet. I've been using the same template since 2017. I do it every single year. It has certain categories on it. I started working with Dad in 2020, and I was looking back on some of my old annual goals sheets when I was in public relations and marketing. And one of my goals in 2017 was start to learn Dad's business.
Wow.
And it was like, I love that was the dream for a long time. And I remember starting to like listen to commercial real estate podcasts or just even understand the concepts. I didn't take a finance course in school. I guess I did take economics, but I didn't take a real estate class. I really didn't know much about the business. And when we were kids, this is a story at the end of the buff. When we were kids and we'd ask Dad, like, what do you do for work? He told us he sells dirt. That was it. And we're like, oh, how how cool. Dad sells dirt.
We play in dirt and Dad sells dirt. Like this is perfectly aligned.
Yeah.
So I didn't know a ton about the business, but there was something in me that always wanted to work with him. And like you said, there's a lot of father-son dynamics in this business. There's very few women in general in commercial real estate. Very, even fewer women in land brokerage. We do only land, only brokerage, only North Georgia, North Atlanta, really. And so out the gate, there were moments where I'd be sitting in a room with 60-year-old men, and I'm the youngest and I'm the only girl, and I'm thinking, I can't believe I get to sit around these tables. And it's really that because of my dad that I get to even like sit and listen to some of these conversations. So,
I mean, it chokes me up because I have one daughter, and the whole idea of like, making sure that you never do anything to compromise that relationship. And so when you add business to the mix and then you add managing, and I'm not a great manager, and thank goodness she's got amazing initiative and she picks everything up really quickly. I mean, she's a rock star. I mean, she truly is.
I believe it.
Yeah, it's clear to see.
I mean, she's picked it all up really, really well. I mean, the hardest part for her in the business will be, I'm not going to let her go knock on Farmer Jones's door in the middle of nowhere by herself at 5'3", but that's the only thing. Everything else, she is just right on it. And if there's any words of wisdom that we're trying to implement in 24 is making sure we still have like at least once a month we go do something fun, the two of us, that's unrelated to work. I mean, a quick story about her is she'll call anyone. She's fearless. She says, Dad, we have a meeting up in a small town north of Atlanta. Great. Who we meeting with this guy? Where are we meeting? We're meeting at City Hall. Okay.
it's like 100 acres. It's the best property in town.
Amazing tract. We walk in and we meet this gentleman, and he's the mayor. And we had not done our due diligence. And it was an amazing process winning him over and ultimately getting his property put together, getting it zoned. We're hopefully going to close in April. But
Nice.
That was her, tenacious perseverance. And I think the deal blew up about 3 times, which is unfortunately, she said, Dad, why does this take so long? Everything takes forever in land.
Yeah. It's common going into incorporating business with family, because Bo and I felt that a little bit before even starting this, like as brothers, was like, I think we even said it, like it'd be awful to get in the middle of this and things kind of go sideways in this and that affect our relationship and stuff. So I know that's a very real thing, but I'm curious, Bruce, from your point of view as the dad and as, having your daughter come in, was that a big thought in your mind when she showed interest and wanted to come in? Could you expand on that aspect of it and how you get through it or got through it?
Well, we'll say getting through it is probably a better description.
Yeah, great.
The reality is, I'll be 63 this month, and I'm kind of at the tail end. Like I'm ready to wind down and really start to kind of sail into the sunset before too terribly long. Well, Marina comes along and it's like, let's build this business, Dad. Come on, let's go. and so I have literally been working harder the last couple years than I have in probably 10 years. And it's been great because I really am beginning to see that we're getting into a groove. We're getting into, understanding how to work together. And I can see the light at the end of the tunnel that, I don't think we've had a pitch that we've done together that we haven't won. And there's something about her youthful energy and, it's like, well, you tell her no, sir. I'm not telling her no.
Yeah, we tell people that he has wisdom and I have energy, and it's quite the combo.
Yeah. Wow.
But the other thing I'll add that's interesting about family business is like making time to say, what do we expect from each other? And, things go awry when people miss expectations. And so even saying like at the end of the year, what worked, what didn't work? What do we want to change? Okay, I really actually wanted you to be doing this thing. And it's like, oh, okay, good to know.
That's great.
No,
Yeah.
it's cute because I remember she would like maybe call and like, where are you? I'm at Costco. Like, well, I mean, I've never had to tell anybody where I am. I'm at Costco.
Yeah, he's never worked with anybody. Like Dad built the whole business by himself.
Yeah.
37 years later, one-man show. And at year 38, he hires me.
Right. Yeah.
So the learning curve is real and fair and honest.
But you'd say ultimately, it seems like you all have just created a whole different level of a bond than you would have otherwise.
Yeah, part of the thing that from a father's standpoint, the thought of, this industry can provide her a nice lifestyle that could give her flexibility. And ultimately, as she becomes a mother, to be able to have something that can be so flexible, and she actually can manage people. So I could see her growing this and, being able to do great, great things.
Mm-hmm. I can too.
And I want to sit back and be Oz behind the curtain and say, because one of the things that's really fun is like she found a piece of property on Friday, today's Thursday, and it was like, okay, this property just came on the market. Who, and I turn my wheels and think of the exact buyer just because that's 40 years of knowing who the buyers are, and so that's a fun dynamic when the energy gets going on a new deal, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And from my perspective, I remember my very first year in the business, I told a friend of mine, I probably told you too, like I've never had more respect and compassion for my dad at the same time. Like I just did not know the brain damage that land brokerage can be. I look back on my life and I think of like 08, 09, and where was I in life? And where was he? And how did I not know like how awful the market was? And so I had a ton of respect for everything he had built and a ton of compassion that I'm like, you've been doing this on your own. And for so long of life, I just got to enjoy the benefit of a hardworking dad without really knowing the day in and day out. And, sometimes you get punched in the face on a deal and you keep going.
Yeah. Dad, you're speaking to a feeling that I have over this past year doing this podcast with Bo. Like, I had no idea. I thought my dad, what he did was work. That was it. Like in preschool, they went around like, my dad's a firefighter, my manager's Taco Bell, blah, blah. And it came to me, I was like, my dad goes to work. He works at work. But learning what all goes into it, like I totally have way more of an appreciation for my dad on a whole new level. Like I feel that, Marina. I feel that a lot. Yeah.
And Marina, I wonder if you had kind of a similar experience that I had when I started working with my dad. I remember the whole first year, the whole time I was thinking, I'll never know all this stuff. Like I will never, because he had a certain depth of knowledge when it came to like the properties and the people. And I just felt like there's no way I'll ever know all these people. When I first started, he used to drive me around town. Like we'd go eat lunch almost every day. And he'd drive me around town and he would just point and say, so-and-so owns this property over here and I've sold this one over here 3 different times over the years. And and he would just download all the stuff that was just at the ready for him. And it was a completely overwhelming experience for me. I'm like, what? Like how and there's still all kinds of that stuff that I don't know. But it was probably 2 years before I got over the voice in the back of my head that said, like, why is anybody going to want to work with you?
Yeah.
If
Imposter syndrome.
if they could work with him. Like,
Oh, right.
you know, like nobody's going to want, you know. And so we did team up. He included me in everything. He kicked a lot of stuff my way. I got a lot of spooners from him and stuff. But you know that term, spooner?
I know the term spooning.
Yeah, that's why I want to differentiate between the two.
You got a lot of spooning from Dad?
A spooner is when like you spoon feed a deal.
Oh, yeah.
So he was giving me reps.
Sure.
That would have been way easier for him to just handle, that he would kick my way.
He wasn't like, come here, son, let's cuddle.
Yeah, no, we weren't.
I see you need a
cuddling.
cuddle.
Yeah, as soon as I said spooner, I was like, I'm going to need to explain exactly what this is to Timmy. He's going to be with his imagination somewhere it doesn't need to be. But like, did you kind of have that same experience?
Still today, like Dad will call and be like, hey, remember that 47-acre piece of property owned by Bobby Jones that's on this road? And I'm like, honestly, no idea what you're talking about. You know, like, let me look them up and remember. But it's just right there. Like, he knows. I mean, his first job out of college, every 50-acre tract and larger in one county. So he can drive all over that whole county and be like, I know exactly the history of all these properties. So, like, that's one thing that I'm like, one day I'll get there.
One day you will get there, but I'm 20 years in now, and I still don't think I'll ever have that kind of knowledge that our dad did.
Yeah. But you've got, like you say to me often, you've got the knowledge that you have, you know, that's unique to you and what you bring.
Yeah,
You know?
it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
And
So often we'll be driving around and see a big piece of property and he's thinking, oh, I know exactly what should go there. And I'm like, how? But it's just driving around long enough, watching development happen long enough to be able to kind of read the trees and see what cool thing could happen next.
Wisdom.
wisdom and experience.
That's right.
Can't get that in a book.
No, well, you can in Top Dollar Dirt. You can, right? A nice little plug.
That was good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And for the record, the subhead of that book is 13 Proven Strategies to be a Wise Landowner. And every chapter of the book, there's 13 chapters, and every chapter of the book is a strategy to maximize your property's value and a story from my dad's career, speaking of stories, of how he helped a landowner figure out how to solve a problem. So that was a fun thing to work on together.
Yeah, I bet.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bruce and Marina, you want to help me with a pop quiz for Timmy?
Hey! Let's do it.
As our guests, you guys get to go first.
Whenever y'all ready. Because I am.
Name one thing. This is an easy question. Softball right here. One thing that affects property value.
Well, I think in a negative way, it could be rock, floodplain, wetland, streams. Yeah?
Great job.
Nicely done. Okay, question 2. Explain why sewers drive value.
Well, the more sewers you got, the more people can poop. Which means it's the more people that can. So essentially, if you want apartments, right, where you can fill a lot of people up there, you need sewage to go out. You wouldn't be able to do that if there was not sewage. And so it limits you to what you can put on that land. And land, the value of land, is all about what you're able to build on it.
Okay, that's a pretty good answer, I think. Would you agree? Like, you got that one right? Yeah. So, for instance, let's say you were going to develop some homes, do a little subdivision, and you bought a 20 acres.
Sure.
And here in town, if you don't have sewers, those are 1 acre lots.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're going to have to do a septic system on each one. So you get to sell 20 lots for, let's say, $50,000.
Yeah. Okay.
So what do you have? You've got $1 million worth of value there.
Yeah. Right.
Right now, they're expanding the sewage system out 54
Okay.
to the east,
Yeah.
so that when you buy that 20-acre piece of land, you might be able to put 3 houses per acre or 4 houses per acre, and you might still be able to sell those for $50,000. And so if you can do 20 times 4, if you could do 80 homes, 80 lots at $50,000 an acre, how much value is there now?
A lot more.
Yeah. Or 4 times more because there's sewer access and you can do smaller lots.
Right.
You don't have to worry about septic
Yeah.
for a residential example. So very good. Okay,
cool.
great. Bruce.
So my question, Timmy, was related to how developers look at land from the standpoint of price. Do they look at it as a per acre price or a per unit price, and why?
It'd be per unit. Yes, okay. Per unit. And here's what I remember. I remember you saying it's not about the size of the land. It's about what could be built on it. But I don't think that's the answer you're fishing for.
That's generally it. It's really tied into Bo's question or his story of the 1 houses versus 4 houses. But the landowners are the ones who get stuck on a per acre price, and that's the education process that we need to take them through.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
great point.
There, while we're talking about pricing, common misconception of landowners. There's a price, an as-is price, and a fully entitled price. The as-is price is what will someone buy your land for right now? As it is, make no changes, purchase it today. And that's usually real small compared to the fully entitled price, but it could happen today. The fully entitled price is how much will a developer pay for this land after it's rezoned, once all the utilities are there, once they have all their permits, and they can officially build whatever they want to build, then they could pay X amount for this land. That's often a confusing thing for landowners of, why can't they pay me the highest price right now? And unfortunately, the process is a 12 to 24 month process. But if you can wait, you can get the higher price.
Makes sense. Yep, makes sense.
Question 4.
Yes.
What is an easement?
If I own property and there's an easement on it that's given somebody permission to do something on a piece of that property where the easement is, I gotta let them do it. It's like official permission to do shit on the land.
Official permission is kind of a good way to explain that, is they have the right to come on your land even though they don't own it for a specific purpose that that easement allows.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're good at this.
Yeah, I know. Are you surprised?
No, not anymore. Yeah.
We're not allowed to quiz them on something we haven't covered, are we?
Oh, you totally are.
Please.
So question 5.
How many years does someone have to use a prescriptive easement before they begin to have some rights by having used it over a long period of time?
Ooh. So you've got permanent easements, and what you just said is called a prescriptive easement?
Yes.
So it sounds like there's something parallel to a statute of limitations where when the time runs out, that easement's gone?
Almost the opposite in this case.
Okay. Oh, no easements can come, but after this amount of time, you can do an easement?
Not exactly.
Well, I'm trying to figure out the period of time, so I'm trying to get the proper context for...
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, but this is kind of along the lines of squatters' rights, right? So you and I own a big 50-acre plot of land out in the county, okay? And we don't walk it twice a year like they recommend. And over the course of a certain amount of time, somebody else is using our property without our permission, without our knowledge, and we essentially consent to allow it because we do nothing to prevent it.
Sure, okay.
Even though we don't know.
Yeah.
And so after a certain amount of time there,
oh, yeah.
they will have an easement because we never did anything about it, even though we didn't know.
Gotcha. I would, okay.
So what's that period of time before
Right.
They actually end up with an easement for
Marina and Bruce. Does that sound correct? Right?
No, and it's typically exactly like Bo said it, and it's usually, at least what I've come across, with access, that people are cutting across a corner of your property to get to their property.
Sure.
And what the owners will do once they learn about it, they have to block it off at least once a year and prove that they blocked it off to maintain full ownership without giving up some prescriptive rights. And I'm embarrassed that I don't know the time frame that I asked you to, and I stumped my own question.
Well, so
I hope I'm not penalized by that. But
I don't think so.
Alice can probably figure that out. Alice, will you do a Google search real quick on that?
What would be that search?
Yeah, how would you frame that search, Bruce?
What would you ask Google?
How long does a prescriptive easement or use of land have to be prior to it becoming a prescriptive easement?
So prescriptive. And my gut is telling me 7 years. But I have absolutely no clue.
But the takeaway for the landowners, block your entrance once a year and take photos of it.
Yes. I just remember, what was the song? Oh, no, don't stand. Go walk the land. That was a good little jingle.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alice is here.
Alice, what do you got?
So Google says between 5 and 10 years.
Hey, between
Okay.
5 and 10 years.
Timmy, look at you
Thank
go.
you, Alice. So what I'm looking at, it says 5 years in California, 10 years in New York, 20 years in Wisconsin.
Whoa.
So it seems like it would be state to state, but it's
on
a
average.
certain amount of years.
On average, I guess, would be 5 to 10 years, which, right in the middle of that would be 7, which is right on the money.
There's probably some state where it's 7.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, cool. That'd be 5 for 5.
That was nicely done, man.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We're Bruce and Marina. Is there anything else besides the book, which if you are watching right now, go to the show notes. We will link the book, Top Dollar Dirt, 13 Proven Strategies for
To be a wise landowner.
to be a wise landowner. Thank you. And is there anywhere else, anything else y'all want to plug, or if they can follow you anywhere else? This is your time.
No, we just appreciate the opportunity. This always helps us to, sharpen our saw relative to communicating well together. And I mean, introducing my daughter, I could not be more excited about.
Oh, we can tell.
Thank you guys.
And you should be proud. Yep.
The first podcast we've done together. Dad has been on podcasts before, and we've never done one together till today.
Come on.
Nice.
Come on. It was great. You all were fantastic.
You were.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, just for the record, what is your website?
NorthGeorgiaLand.com.
All right. And if they want to reach out to you via LinkedIn, where would they go?
Marina Mirolli.
Marina Mirolli. Got it.
Yeah, and if any of your audience has questions, just general land questions or anything, I mean, we're happy to be a resource to just bounce ideas off of and help anybody.
Yep.
Happy to do that.
Well, all of our listeners now got a lifeline to these very wise and brilliant human beings.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce and Marina, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate your time and your patience as we got started, and it's been a wonderful conversation, and it's great to reconnect with you both.
Yeah. Thank you all so much.
I've been watching you, Bo, for years, and I thank you for all you're doing to really elevate the level of professionalism in our community as, brokers. I just appreciate your podcast and all the work you're doing with CCIM, and, united, we can make a difference.
And you're a great teacher, so thanks.
Oh,
Isn't he?
well, thank you both.
He's just the best. He's the best. Bye, Alice.
Bye, Alice.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Commercially Speaking. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe. If there's anything specifically that you'd like Bo to teach me, and you as well, please put it in the comments right now. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please consider taking the time to leave a review. It really helps in this world. If you want to watch another episode, you can click right on the screen here and check back next Monday for a brand new episode of Commercially Speaking. Bye, Alice.